Welcome back to episode 2 of Motivational IQ, where we open your brain and figure out what makes you tick, tell stories, anecdotes, allegories, whatever it takes to help us understand what makes really things go on inside our brain. I'm Andy Thompson. I'm glad to host this and tell stories, looking always for feedback. If you've got an idea, you want to ask a question, you want to be a guest, you got somebody you want to be a guest, you want to ask about a book, get a recommendation, reach out. You can find me on my website at motivationaliqpodcast.com or theworkjoyproject.com. And as I'm looking for guests, I'm looking for books, I've got book recommendations, reach on out. You can also book a free custom coaching consultation, a free initial consult on the website. I'm a custom coach. That's what I do. Looking forward to doing it. Let's jump right in. I want to start by talking about a concept that I call motivational intelligence buoyancy. The reason I talk about this is because, in life, we kind of have two jobs to do. One is to react to the situations that we have, and the other is to prepare to react to the situations we face. Most of what we do is preparing to react. For example, saving up money is preparing to react. Right? Working out is preparing to react. Studying is preparing to react. Most of the situations we face are not ones that we haven't prepared for, but it does happen. This podcast is meant to kind of unpack everything that has to do with what makes us want to do things or not want to do things, and help you understand the spectrum of where you are, what moves you up and down along it. Because throughout any given day, you're going to be at different places in the process. In episode 1, we talked about the conscious competency, the spectrum of how we learn and what we need as we go through it. You're going to be at all levels of that kind of all the time. You will have places where you like to camp and stay and where you're comfortable, and you'll observe when you move up and down. But I'll give you a really clear example. If you've got a significant other or even a pet or a neighbor or someone that you have a relationship with, and something goes sour with that relationship, you immediately throttle back to the very beginning. We're going to talk more about that in a minute, but that is the concept. So buoyancy is really knowing where you are and your ability to keep kind of recognizing what I need in order to move forward. So in order to move forward, you have to have, number one, a long-term goal, but you also have to have a path. No one can move forward without a path, like the Cheshire Cat says in Alice in Wonderland, right? When Alice says, which is the right path, or right, which is the right way to go, Cheshire Cat says, well, it all depends on where you're going. Or Yogi Berra that said, if you don't know where you're going, you're probably going to get there, not knowing where you want to go. Anyway, so motivational buoyancy or IQ buoyancy is really the ability to recognize where you are and kind of to spring back when something offsets your emotions, your mentality, your physical, your spiritual, anything. How do you kind of spring back so that you can keep going? The world calls that discipline, right? When you do what you're supposed to do, even though you don't want to do it, I call it motivational buoyancy. So we're going to talk about that some more. All right. In order to kind of dive into that, I want to revisit just really quickly the conscious competency spectrum and what we need along the path. I've labeled those 4 categories, ironically, into 3. The aspects that we need, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, I discussed in episode 1, align better with the 3, and I don't have a 4th. So basically, when you're in the very beginning, that ignorant bliss, and you start to you don't know what you don't know, and then you move into where you do know what you don't know, otherwise called painful awareness. I'm going to call that the survive mode. That's what kicks in is what we need to do to survive. Exiting out of that, somewhere in that do know what you do know, when you start to get like success and smooth operation, as you exit kind of the painful awareness and you get good at it and then you come to smooth operation, I'm going to call that success mode. Okay. So survive mode, success mode, and then over on the far right on the autonomy where it's like smooth operation becomes this kind of like autopilot champion where you don't even realize what you do know. It just happens like us walking, reading a stop sign, or riding a bike. That's I'm gonna call it thriving or transcending mode. So survive, succeed, transcend. And that's what I'm gonna reference predominantly as the motivational factors because survive what you need when you're survival mode is progress, right? You need mastery. You need the ability to do things. You need instructions so you can do things, and you need to do things so you can make progress. When you're in success mode, what you need is to be able to make choices. That's autonomy, right? The ability to have some control over your destiny. And then what you need over in the far right, and again, this is not need only, it's need the most. When you're in thrive mode, is purpose, part of something bigger. And we can talk about all sorts of very interesting stories from Martin Luther King to the Wright brothers to Amelia Earhart to heroes from books and movies about where they are, and you can watch them go, and it's super fun. But survive, succeed, transcend, or thrive. So, to give you some context of how I kind of discovered this, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my career and kind of the different experiences I had. I talked originally about growing up in Indiana and really liking to do physical work and realizing I could get rewarded for that, and then seeing that people didn't like getting rewarded for the things that they did, 8 to 10 hours a day, and kind of setting myself on this journey of figuring out what is it that makes people tick. Well, when I was young, I was the caretaker, mower, really, of a cemetery. And I really enjoyed the progress of getting that cemetery mowed, not only making it look better, but just we divided it into sections and I'd get one section done and then I'd go to the next section. Right? So there's this dopamine kind of filler of, completing piece by piece by piece and then being done and then getting a check for having done it. On a regular basis, this old worn out rider mower that I had as a teenager that I had purchased from my older brother who ran the cemetery for a while would break down. And because it was before I was 16, my parents would drop me off with tools and the mower and everything. And there were no cell phones. So I'd have to walk like a quarter of a mile to the butcher shop nearby and ask if I could use a phone if I had to go home. But mostly they'd drop me off and I'd stay for 4 or 5 hours, and so I'd have to fix things, so I'd have setbacks, right? A tree down, a stone down, the mower breaks, a belt breaks, right? Whatever it is, and overcome those, and I noticed pretty quickly that I would go through these cycles with regard to, like, my motivation to be there, but I could always hold on to what it was driving toward, which was, "Let's get this done, make it look good, and collect the check." Fast forward, I went to college, Brigham Young University as a chemical engineering major coming out of high school. I really hated English. I hated social studies. I hated history. I love it now, which is weird. But I think the reason I didn't like it before is I hadn't matured in to like why it would be valuable long term. Math, complete a problem, done, right? Physics, figure out the thing, done. So I started at BYU in chemical engineering and rapidly switched to physics as a major. And I think I did that for 2 or 3 years. But I remember the day when I kind of looked at myself and said, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I didn't have a long term purpose. When we talk about kind of survive, succeed, transcend, I had thrust myself into the survival mode by realizing I was a fish out of water. And so then I started kind of taking inventory of what I liked, what I wanted to do. And at that point, all I wanted to do was graduate and go on and do business. I was started doing landscaping when I was in college with a friend, and we had a lot of fun and we made good money and I was enjoying it. So that was my goal. So I had spent 2 years as a missionary in South America, in Brazil, São Paulo, became fluent in Portuguese, and when I got back, I tested out of a lot of credits in Portuguese because I had, I dug into learning and study as something I could do, and so I graduated in Portuguese with the intent to go run a landscaping business. Uh, but my professor talked me into getting a PhD in Portuguese, basically said, You can teach during the winter and then do your business in the summer. So I started a PhD in Portuguese second language acquisition teaching at the University of Illinois. And about a year into it, I realized this is not for me as well. That was when I switched over and got a degree, a business degree, a master's in business in technology strategy, kind of marketing, technology, and business. As I finally found something that really pushed all my buttons and made me really excited about learning and growing, I saw all the markers from my history, but also the process that I had gone through as I kind of got into one and said, no. I toyed with music. I toyed with computer science. I toyed with psychology as majors, would go to a class and realize it wasn't for me, right? Not because it's not great or respectable, because it didn't fit Andy. In corporate America, I got a job in between IT and the business. And I ended up in project management. And I realize now that what project management does is it basically puts you through that cycle for every single project. Project management became to me the conscious competency cycle. Dive into something you don't know, figure it out, solve it, deliver it. And I learned that I really didn't like managing things. So this was where I discovered kind of the core of those principles. It's about that time, a few years into my career, that I watched that Dan Pink TED Talk and started reading everything I could get my hands on with regards to teams, motivation, relationships, and what made us tick. One of the things I learned about in corporate America is their use of SMART goals. So, SMART goals, if you're not familiar with those, it's a goal that is specific, measurable, attainable or achievable, relevant, and time based. In other words, all the aspects that you need in survive mode. It's a very easy way to specifically describe what you're supposed to do. But you think about this, if you gave any leader, any key executive, anybody who is really at the top of their career a SMART goal, they'd look at you like you're crazy. So there's a place for them, and it's almost predominantly in survive and the early stages of succeed. In other words, when you don't know what you don't know, SMART is powerful. When you do know what you don't know, SMART is powerful because it ties the why into the how and the what. In other words, I figured out that with SMART goals and kind of impact and purpose and being a contributor and have it, being part of the team and understanding what the vision of the company was, is that at all stages of the conscious competency model and survive, succeed, transcend, that you need a little bit of why, a little bit of how, and a little bit of what, but in different mixes. In other words, as we've talked about at the beginning, what matters a lot, what you're doing, that you're making progress, and that you're learning. And then making choices matters next. And then the purpose behind it matters the most at the end. A starving person will do anything to feed themselves, feed their family, get shelter, and get comfort. But as they start to get good at it, they'll be like, I think I could do something different and more that maybe doesn't involve shoveling manure or digging ditches or whatever it is, right? They'll start to exercise choices to get to the point where they are flexing their ability to choose in that success mode. It doesn't happen until you get comfortable doing what you're supposed to do. In other words, establishing a repeatable habit of a behavior will almost always result in you wanting to make changes to the behavior because you're comfortable with it. And then establishing a repeatable behavior of making choices will either guide you to a purpose or structure the purpose. That is the process of the model. So, just a quick example of a SMART goal, right? I want to get in shape. That's a not SMART goal. Making it SMART would be I will run for 30 minutes 3 times a week for the next 3 months to improve my cardiovascular health. And I would say set a target on what that health is, right? To run at a certain pace, or I need to save money, a not good goal. Probably not very motivating. Much more motivating, at least in the beginning stages, would be I will save $100 from every paycheck for the next 6 months to build a $1,200 emergency fund by December 31st. Again, you can see these are very useful when progress matters, right? When making like choices for a specific short-term goal help, but that why needs to figure in. And that's where Simon Sinek says, start with why and kind of things like that. Okay. I want to end with, I threw some of this content into AI and said, what are some questions you would ask? And they're interesting. So let's start with the first one. Let me read that. Question number 1. Motivational IQ is a unique phrase. Most people understand motivation and IQ separately, but what's the synergy between them and why is it the foundation of the show? Okay, so it's kind of based on the concept of emotional intelligence or even intelligence quotient, right? Where how we interact with data and environments for intelligence in general, what your IQ is, or how you work with emotions, awareness, and how you respond to how others respond. For emotional intelligence, it's the same thing. What motivates us along the process, gets us started, burns us out. I had so many starts and stops in my career and ended up in project management, which is by definition a start and a stop as a career, that I started to see this very, very clearly. Okay, question number 2. After 30 years of leading teams and rescuing projects, what was the specific moment or realization that made you say, I need to start this podcast now? I left corporate America about 10 years ago and started working for myself, and essentially forced myself into learning things I didn't know that I didn't already know. I've learned a lot. I've gone through a lot of different cycles and different things, started lots of little businesses, sold a couple little ones, learned more about the inner workings of a business, a small business, about sleepless nights for finances and cash flow. I was never focused on, I was always focused on financial performance for projects and teams, but not like livelihood. And so some really good insights there. What it made me think of most, the biggest aha moments, was looking back at my career and noticing what different managers, coworkers, teams that reported to me, executives, what they did or did not do that provided inspiration and motivation to get things done. Very interesting to see that, hey, this manager at this time did this, that resonated with these people, but not with these folks. So some of those big aha moments. As always, thank you for listening. If you're interested in learning more, go out to the website, motivationaliqpodcast.com, or the Work Joy Project. Feel free, leave a comment, ask a question, submit a recommendation for an interview, a guest, or a book to review, or a question. And feel free to book a free consult or ask me about custom coaching. If you like it, please share it. Please comment. Please like it. Please subscribe and show us that what's helping. And if there's something more that you're looking for, do not hesitate to recommend it. As always, stay engaged and keep trying and maintain that motivational IQ buoyancy. Thank you.